Welcome everyone to News of the Day, brought to you by the True Health Initiative. I am your host, Dr. Tom Rafai, lifestyle medicine specialist, and just super excited to bring you today Margaret Moore, not only the founder and CEO of Wellcoaches, but the chair of the Institute of Coaching at the McLean Hospital, affiliated with Harvard. And, to be honest with you, if you don't mind, Margaret, I'm going to kind of skip the bio part, because if people don't know who you are, I'm going to urge, just Google Margaret Moore Wellcoaches. You're going to see what gives her really the ultimate credibility in an area of medicine, I think, and the world beyond even medicine. I'm sorry, I reflected my bias as a physician. That is missing in this concept of how we ask people to transform their lifestyles for the betterment of their wellness or weight loss or disease prevention and overall just vitality. So thank you for being here, first and foremost.
Thank you, Tom. You're one of my favorite people, so I've been looking forward to this.
Okay, thank you very much. Now the pressure is on, and you are very busy, so we really appreciate this. I want to just first start out and say that my initial experience with you is worth noting for a minute. When I really started to get involved in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and find my people, if you will, I was fortunate enough to listen to you speak. Mostly in this position. Where have you been all my life? This is exactly what we're talking about. If you want to talk about motivational interviewing, positive psychology, all of the things that need to be put together of skill sets that aren't taught to physicians yet. You're doing a good job in that regard. I want to talk about that. But as far as the historical sense of becoming a physician, I had to struggle to figure it out. I had a background in psychology that helped. My own issues with binge eating disorder and so forth helped, but it was not a natural progression, and how that could be encapsulated, I really didn't know and think maybe even was possible. And then there you were, and there it was, Wellcoaches. And since then, as you know, I've been a huge fan and strongly encourage any system or business I've been with that your coaches need to be Wellcoaches to hit a standard that is gold standard. And I think that's very just important for me to say. To start this off, if you will, one thing I would like to just ask is, and I've read, but maybe I can dig just a little bit further into why, this is so important to you. You are driven by it, and that makes everyone attracted to your work. Mm-hmm. There's something that is driving this person to help change the world by understanding how we communicate with people, and from the physician's perspective, not being so prescriptive, do as I say, but to one in which the agency is with the participant, with the patient, the customer, however you want to describe, depending on the context, and how you've been so driven to make sure as many people know as possible the best path to helping someone transform within their own agency to better health and better wellness. What drives you? Why do you want to do this?
Well, I do think it's a fundamental dimension of who I am. My first career was in biotechnology. And the first thing to say is I'm drawn to fields that are new. So I'm on the ground floor. And when I started in biotech in the early 80s, that was the ground floor. And so I grew up as a biologist in an MBA, helping the biotech world flourish. In fact, I spent 5 years in the vaccines business as well. So that's where I grew up. And I would say to a large extent, coaching found me, because I decided when I hit a certain phase of my biotech career that I had more, there was another, big chapter in my life that wasn't biotech. I always had a sense that I would change gears. And so what I was watching is, all of my very smart MD, PhD colleagues in biotech not take good care of themselves. And I've been doing it since I was a teenager. Like, I just was wired in self-regulation. So, in my late teens, I was already exercising regularly, eating well, learning how to cook properly, managing my stress in, somewhat primitive ways compared to now.
And that was natural for you?
And sleeping. Yeah, I was just wired. I just knew it. And so I was watching all these people not do it and thinking, well, they get their they get stuff done at work. Why aren't they doing it for themselves? And so I had this idea of creating a new profession that was good at helping people make their
Yeah.
own self change a project. And I was sort of, when you're a CEO or COO in a biotech company, a small company, it's just one big project, right? And so you're constantly moving projects forward. So I was just naturally good at that, self regulation and project. So that's where I was coming from. But the other thing I would say is that I realized also as a teenager that I would often say to myself, I believe people can change. And I realized when I started saying things like that, there were a lot of people, even as teenagers saying, no, that's not possible. People can't change. And I thought, oh, why am I different? Like, what is going on here? And the other thing I noticed about myself compared to other people, that if there was two roads to choose in any given moment, I'd always choose the harder one. So I would grow faster. It never occurred to me to take the easy road.
It's that
And it
hormesis.
wasn't because it wasn't, it was just because I wanted to grow. So I am wired to grow to
You're built for
myself.
this.
And I'm also, and I understand how to move things forward. And so, but when I started Well Coaches, I wasn't planning on being a coach. I'm an MBA. I was expecting to build a business. But what happened is when I first began to present to audience, way back then we partnered with the American College of Sports Medicine. That's a long story, but that we needed a good housekeeping seal of approval, and that's a medical society that is highly regarded. And so
Absolutely.
I was able to convince back then, in the first 6 months of starting Well Coaches, that they would be our strategic partner and have continued to this day. American College of Lifestyle Medicine came later, and so we wanted to build this profession. So I would turn up at these ACSM meetings full of personal trainers, none of whom I'd ever met. I mean, I'd never worked with a personal trainer before. I wasn't even in the wellness field. If you're in biotech, you're in this really elite world that doesn't interact with the rest of the world.
But
So
you
I'm
did
standing.
see, but you did see people you loved, you knew were very smart and doing, I don't want to say unwise, but doing things that didn't make sense to you. And that was a cognitive dissonance you just couldn't live with in a sense. And it created this whole second stage, this
Yeah,
whole
no, that's it's good to unpack that. Yes. So I watched. This is really so this is late 90s, right? 99 is when we had the idea. It was actually my husband's idea, by the way.
oh,
But the idea to start Well Coaches, and the at that moment we still didn't have all the data around, the drug, because obesity has really been on a rampant rise since then, and
I
we
think
we
we're
didn't
good.
have as much data about lifestyle medicine and disease prevention and treatment, right? So, but I was pretty sure that that's how it worked. And I was pretty sure if you're in biotech, you're looking for the next big thing, like where's the biggest need. And so I thought, wow, if we could build a new profession, which is generally at least 100,000 professionals, because I'm not thinking small here. In biotech, it used to be you were going after $100 million drug. Now it's like a $5 billion drug. But I wanted to do something on scale, and so I thought, gosh, what if we can actually make a profession that is really good at helping people change when change is hard, and for a lot of people for whom health is not what they dream about having. They're not like us, health nuts, for whom health is the end. For most of the planet, because very few people are high in self-regulation. If you know the character strengths data, it's actually one of the lowest values in our society, right? And that's
That's
what
where accountability comes in. Yeah.
yeah. And so basically you need to have a process and a profession that knows how to do that. And I think, as I mean, it's a story as to how we built the first protocols, but I think I had a natural understanding of this implicitly, but not explicit, and it was through coaching. So I was telling you, I was standing in front of these fitness professionals, all who were looking at me, thinking we're coaches already. I thought, okay, well, I guess I better do it. So I would coach on stage, and I had to make something happen. Like I had to create an aha moment in 15 minutes.
Wow,
And
wow.
so I put myself under a lot of pressure, but I was good at it. Like I could get people to see where their growth edge is and then flip it in 15 minutes. And then everybody would notice the person on the stage has just like had a complete physical, you can see their body language has changed and they're looking at me and saying, no, I guess I don't do that. And so that's how it got started. Then I realized, okay, I guess I'm the coach. I guess that's what
That
I'm
is
going to do.
fantastic. That is actually a I don't think I've ever heard that. I don't know any other places that I've that you've been that you might have expressed that specificity of what happened in the and that moment and even that it was your husband's idea and that. But this was just really insightful and helpful for me, and the credibility that's provided by and the wisdom that's also reflected in the alignment with the American College of Sports Medicine. They're obviously not just a rubber stamp. They truly put you through the ringer. And then there was a point in it to make sure that as it is that Well Coaches is absolutely valid in every way, shape, or form, and as a mechanism for helping train professionals to become the type of coaches that really we need versus the prescriptive do as I say, not as I often do. Sorry, doctors. But the American College of Sport of Life, excuse me, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and that's a very natural fit, right? I mean, you could have, in theory, said, they should have started there. Well, whatever. The bottom line is it's building that relationship. Where was that nidus? Where was that origin point?
Yes, and I'm just blanking on his name, and I was remembering it the other day. I went to Reading, Pennsylvania in about 2004. So one of the early founders of ACLM was a physician in practice there, and I came into his meeting room, boardroom, and was teaching the physician team, the nurse practitioner who also went on to take well coaches in new places, to coach. And so I met David Katz, quite a while ago. I don't remember where, to be honest. I don't think it was, I think it was pre-ACLM. I brought him in to present at the Harvard Medical School coaching conference that we do, at the Institute of Coaching. And so, and I'm sure I'm just not remembering everybody. Well, Eddie Phillips, so maybe he's the main connection because this is like 2004, 2005. So when Eddie and I got together at an ACSM meeting, like he lives 5 miles down the road from me. We'd never met except when we were traveling. And he was really into exercises medicine at that point, and it was out of our conversation that he began to see that he needed to go after lifestyle as medicine. And at that moment, just a few years later, I co-founded the Institute of Coaching with Carol Kaufman and Susan David, and he started the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. We both were together at the same point, and I chose to go the coaching route rather than the lifestyle medicine route to build that out rather than, but we were very tied at that point. So I suspect those relationships just kept rolling. So yeah, so I knew a lot of the ACLM folks before ACLM formed. So I was sort of already integrated into the community from the beginning.
It was kind of only a matter of time then, and a good choice to make
Yeah.
sure that you built out what you were doing, and then the forces that obviously I think
Yeah.
synergize even better. Eddie's a man who I greatly, in fact, it was Eddie along with Beth Frades that supported the development of the lifestyle medicine course I offer online through Harvard, nutrition
Right.
and metabolic syndrome. That is fantastic. And then you're speaking at ACLM. That's where I first. And you were probably speaking before that. When was the first time you actually went to then presenting at
Yeah, I
ACLM?
remember it wasn't for a few years because it competed with our Harvard conference in time frame, so it was just tough. That was like an all-consuming thing, and it's hard to just like go right into another conference. But at some point, it's probably about 7 years ago, it got large enough. It was around the time, no, it was before David Katz was president, so maybe when Leanna was president, probably. So yeah, so early on, and so I think. I got to know Susan Benegas, and we just formed friendships, right? I mean, that's the
Amazing
great
person.
thing about this field, that I didn't have in my biotech world is the continuity of relationships, the depth of relationships. Like I'm working with a past president of ACSM now on a project like years later. And so we are all like very, like you and I too, we're all very interconnected and our paths keep crossing. And we're embarking on long journeys, right?
Mhm.
Long journeys, like journeys that will take more than our lifetimes. But these relationships are part of, we're a fabric, we're a system of people that are moving and advancing this forward. And so I think that group of leaders, we're all growing up together, really, right? And
Yes.
that's a very special thing because these relationships just get better. Even if I don't see somebody, even you and I have had years where we didn't talk, and then there's a burst of activity. So I think this field is sort of coaching itself and evolving together into
The,
a real force.
the irony of you mentioning that, and I want to mention also, and a little shout out, your podcast with Mike Stack of the University of Michigan on the Wellness Paradox. I really, the Wellness Paradox podcast, I really encourage people to watch because it's going to complement this. I'm not going to want to address things that were there, except for maybe one area in a moment in terms of reimbursement. But great job on that. I learned a lot from that episode as well. In terms of now, I think we've got people really excited. You even mentioned that you were drawn to the concept of coaching by seeing a problem that was clearly evident in front of you. Not people who have, and we respect obviously the issues of healthcare literacy and so forth, and overall literacy. But these were people. I imagine you're talking about people with PhDs and masters, very intelligent people,
Mhm.
and probably some research MDs, et cetera. And something's not adding up. All this, speaking of a paradox, all this knowledge and what's happening in terms of wellness, and maybe it was because there was so much focus on the bio. Maybe we can hack our way out of this with a medication. That's a whole different discussion. But
Right.
something wasn't happening, and so I'm sure people are also then thinking themselves, well, Margaret, okay, she's a unique being. That's true, but she was in the area of biotech and MBA and went into this. What if I want to? John, Janet, whoever it might be, and I don't have any background, but I want to work in wellness coaching. And you have those options, all the way from that to a physician who would want to, and obviously dietitians and everywhere in between. I would even encourage psychologists to consider, and probably you have had many go through WellCoach. So what in a menu to hopefully get to stimulate some interest for those to go to the WellCoaches website and to look at the options. But what is an overview of what's there from the basic, if you will, or the your non-health professional who can really still gain some great skills for what you're offering, all the way maybe to the physician and even the cool education to a lot of the coaches on biometrics and learning about labs and so forth. I guess that's in the middle there.
Medicine.
Give us, yes, I'd like what's a bit of a menu overview of where people can funnel themselves into and gain advantage.
Right. Yeah.
Coaches.
Well, I think, Wellcoaches is a force of nature now, really. It's bigger than all of us because it's a community of, well over, we're going to be 15,000 and we've taught in 50 countries, and we've now got, Simon Matthews, who's CEO of Wellcoaches Australia and Singapore, and Noah Gertner in Canada, Toronto, where I come from, and Ronnie Polak in Israel, and we have Indra Sistemas in Mexico, and these are friends. And then our my dear friend Jack in China, and so we have become a global force, and I think we attract the best of people who want to serve and wanted and aren't just looking for another certification, aren't just looking to check the box, are actually genuinely appreciating that they're not having as much impact as they wish they could. They're having conversations, but they're not turning the lights on. People are not inspired, they're not, activated, they're not shifting, their mindsets are stuck. And so I think that people who come to Wellcoaches are looking for the skill to, really facilitate real sustainable change over time, and And when you read our book, which is public, right? It's a resource for, the field, um, and listen to what we do. We have techniques, science-based, in our repertoire that are above and beyond what others are doing. So I helped obviously lay down the national standards, and the Well Coaches protocol and manual is at the foundation of the standards, but we offer a lot more. And I think I would say that it's a combination of a deep, deep humanity. I mean, real deep empathy for the human beings. It's easy to be, it's easy to talk about being mindful and present and empathetic, but the stuff that really brings you to a place where you can help others to change is a complete acceptance, a complete empathy for the other person. And that takes a fair amount of consciousness to get to. Like, you really got to be pretty awake to who you are, because we're constantly judging ourselves. I mean, we're just wired that way in our culture. So there's this deep humanity, this deep empathy, this deep benevolence for others, and it's real. It's not fake,
And if
and
some,
we're good at it.
yeah.
And then this zest and creativity, like, where are we going, and what's possible here, and what might happen. And so lightening up the heaviness of health issues and life issues, and bringing a lightness and a creativity. We call it the generative moment, when there's the heart of the coaching session is where someone's wanting to shift something that they feel stuck in some way, and our job is to help them create the conditions so that they have an insight, which is what you're generating. And in the time that Well Coaches has existed, we now understand neuroplasticity as the development of neural networks, right? And so and there are many people that would suggest that when you have an aha moment, and you can see it in people's faces, you can feel it energetically, right? That was what I was trying to make happen on the stage. It's likely that neural networks are actually connecting in that moment. You're actually watching it in front of your eyes, right?
So in fact,
And
I've called that brain surgery without a knife.
right, and
That's
you
what
do
you're
it,
doing.
and it's pretty cool to make that happen for somebody else, right? And so you don't want to go back to what you used to do, which is tell people what to do, and explain all your wisdom and give them all your advice, and basically be in the driver's seat instead of putting them in the driver's seat. So I think it's the deep humanity, the zest for the adventure of life, and the creativity to get beyond the worldview, mindset, beliefs, attitudes,
So
assumptions.
that might be more the prerequisite, not that you're a healthcare background, for someone that would seek out becoming well coach certified. For instance, a computer engineer who has maybe a life experience with a family member, and just saw a health experience they knew could be prevented, and wanted to help others avoid that, could come to well coaches
Yes.
without any healthcare background.
Yeah, yeah, we have a personal coach track.
Mhm.
Yeah, we actually, in our core program, just teach coaching competencies. We don't teach lifestyle medicine, or, any life domain, like expertise in a life domain. We separate that into separate courses. Our core, and that's what we did from the beginning, and that differentiated ourselves from the beginning, because we didn't link it to integrative health, and we didn't link it to functional medicine, and we didn't link it to some prescribed menu for lifestyle. We always focused on the coaching competency, and making helping the coach be able to make change happen, facilitate change consistently, quickly, and at will, right? As opposed to just waiting and hoping for it to happen. And so, we used to, we still do get involved in consulting projects where we listen to recordings of other people who are doing coaching like things, and we can see in a very, very quickly what is not happening. And those things aren't happening. The deep connection, like that, you get people instantly to a place of psychological safety, and they spill out what they need to tell you that they may never even put into words before. So you go deep fast, open questions, reflections. and then you see where you see as the coach, you get some idea where you're playing and where they need to shift their mindset, and then you go for it. And so that that skill set is the heart of coaching, for leadership coaching, for life coaching, for health and wellness coaching. So that's what we're really good at, is
Mhm.
how to coach.
You even brought that thought up to my mind. As much as I am biased to helping people achieve optimal metabolic health, that this is beyond that. That someone who
Yeah.
really wanted to just help the performance of their team at a business
Yeah.
could, and probably as a side effect, the team would probably get physically healthier as a bonus, which is great. And then all the way up to and by the way, the different methods that Wellcoaches has, pandemic aside, there's an intensive face-to-face experience, and there is an online option as
Yeah.
well.
So
Correct?
our core course is our signature program. And it's actually like 27 and a half hours. So it's short and sweet. You can either do it over 9 weeks in 2 classes a week. You can do it I mean, since the pandemic, we haven't been able to be together. Hopefully that will change soon. But we have a 4-day version that was residential, and now it's either presented in 4 days in a row with a very fancy video conferencing platform called Jigsaw.
Mhm.
That is the best out there. And or 4 1 days, like 4 Fridays in a month. In
Mhm.
fact, we have a group of physicians coming together in September for our next version of that. So yes, so that's the base, and that you don't have to want to become a coach to do that core training. I'm pretty sure you went through that with the group of
Sure.
physicians, didn't you? Yeah.
In Naples, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the start. And that's all you really have to be thinking about, is just get through that stage, and then you can figure out what you want to do later, because that's enough to kind of shake up the way you practice whatever your profession is,
Mhm.
outside, within medicine or outside medicine. It aligns very well with a very well respected leadership coaching model. I mean, we developed ours independently, but Richard Boyatzis and Case Western have a model called the intentional change theory. The Institute of Coaching just hired one of his mentees as our director of research. That's a model about creating a vision for your ideal self, understanding the gap between there and there. What are your strengths, and then your learning agenda. So that is the sort of leadership application of what we've done. And I use that now because all of my coaching now is in leadership areas. So I do leadership retreats using the Well Coaches tools, but focused on healthcare leadership. And the reason that's important is that healthcare is one industry where coaching principles are relevant from top to bottom. So it's patient facing, it's clinician well-being and professional well-being, job crafting, and then it's leadership. And so I have intentionally kept the same principles for everything that we're doing, because we now have a team of coaches coaching clinicians around. We've done some volunteer work during the pandemic, and there's a nice randomized control study where coaches were a key part of the team on, I think it was about 68 primary care doctors, with some very nice data on, coaching around well-being, burnout, professional uh, development, etc. So what we teach really is our fundamentals that work at all levels.
And you will be, and I don't think one can be a great coach unless they are coached. So as part of the process, you are not going to just become a great coach. You, by definition, to effectuate that, have to be coached. And I can say again, when I saw you in that aha moment of, where have you been? I've been in the chair on the other side a triple digit number of times due to my own issues, and I can assure you that is something you want. You want to be coached. You want to be coached just because it's great, first
Yeah.
of all. Second of all, if you want to become a great coach, you can't know just from one side of
Yeah.
the
Well,
relationship.
here's the deal. We there's two things when it comes to our well-being. One is that you know almost nobody wants to talk to us endlessly about our health, right? It's not. As you get older, it becomes a bigger part of the conversation. But, who wants to listen to you talk about all, the stuff that's going on in your health, right? But the second thing is the reason that it's hard to grow is because you don't yet have the software, right? You haven't actually got the neural networks to support the way that you want to be. And so, how can you do that by yourself? Very easily, right? Because you're trying to have insights, capture insights, and turn them into action. It's perfectly designed for a conversation where between two people we can help you see what you can't see, because we're seeing around corners, right? We're seeing where you're at, and we can see, once you're masterful of this is not beginner coaching, but once you're masterful of this, you can see where they're stuck and the other person can't. And and that's why where to help them, lead them to a place and then help them get past it. That's intuition, right? That's not thinking. You're in your intuitive, and now, Carl Jung's cognitive functions now have science. Where, when we talked about the intuitive dance of coaching in 2002, that was in my early days. You sort of whispered it when you were around scientists because it was woo, I mean, just intuition. But now we know it has certain regions of the brain that are nonlinear, that are operating without your thinking control. Like, you don't have any control over your intuition. You actually have to let it do what it does.
Right.
Right? You actually have to let it. And the other thing, this might, my personality type in Myers-Briggs, my first function is introverted intuition, which is really the inner coach. I never knew I had that ability to be able to intuit, not think, not analyze. Like, I just had to know. And I discovered. I would never have known that I had that ability coming out of my MBA kind of functions. And so that's the thing you get to use is the intuition, which now is either introverted, which is more synthesis, and or extroverted, which is more the creativity, the being able to, like, receive ideas and see patterns and that kind of thing. And so that is a gift of becoming a coach, is you get to use your intuition. And it's because you can't know what the other person needs, can't possibly know. you
And
have
you
you have to read it in with other faculties.
and going back to the partnerships with ACSM and ACLM and the process that you've had, including teaming up with other coaching entities at the potential expense of your own in business success, but because of the ethics surrounding making sure that this is respected in science, you've really put the scientific method behind the great intuition Carl Jung may have had, just like Alexander Graham Bell. I love his discovery, but I want an iPhone now. It had to continue to evolve. And in that sense, leads to the potential for reimbursement, which
Yeah.
you are working on. And I think you mentioned times we've discussed before in some sense, and maybe you can clarify too, in parallel with another group that's fighting for what I think is more justifiable reimbursement, the world of dietitians and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Where are we, being now more selfish in terms of the medical world and wanting to see that world do better, even though I've stepped out of it into the entrepreneurial world, we want to see that do better, and the justification for experts who can effectuate people's change in terms of wellness coaching and dietetics has just not been really well reimbursed. Where are we when it comes to
Yeah,
reimbursement
that's a
for?
good quick. Well, first, uh, there's a lot of ground to prepare before you can get payment for new services in healthcare. And so that basically has been my 20-year journey, because first we had to create protocol that um, that integrated various scientific pieces like transcendental models, self-determination, positive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. So all of that had to get built so that we could say that we're doing a science-based, which when I started was not there in coaching. There's coaching psychologists in Britain and in Australia that were getting going around the same time as I did. And Tony Grant in Australia, the first coaching psychologist, first PhD in coaching psychologist, was one of my big inspirations in the early 2000s. So I was with the founding gang, which is why I could be an MBA and be a creator of a psychological method. I couldn't do it now. I couldn't possibly without the credentials, but I was in early and I think a natural coach. And so first we had to do that. That took us 8 years, our team, to build the protocol that we felt was ready to publish and in a peer-reviewed. It's a Wolters Kluwer book. ACSM peer-reviewed it, and so that's the first part. Then we had to bring the field together to agree on a common standard. So a bunch of us got together. There was 12 of us initially in 2010. The Institute of Coaching, on the other hand, was built. We started that so that there was sort of an academic kind of home for coaching science for the whole field, which is why I basically volunteer half my time between Institute and the national board. And so we wanted to legitimize coaching science, but not just for health and wellness, but for the whole field, which has really happened. We've really been a force for that in the last decade there. And then in terms of health and wellness, we had to build standards. So there were a bunch of us. I mean, it took us 5 years. We had retreat after retreat. We hammered, like we were all coming from different places, all with different, with different ways of thinking about it. And then there became a point when we were ready to build an exam, and thankfully the National Board of Medical Examiners had already identified health coaching as the next big thing. And so they might have been a competitor, but instead, David Eisenberg, if you know him he was consulting for me at the time, and he convinced them to talk to us. And so that's how we came up with the partnership, which became a new entity called the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. So then we built a robust exam. We were, in the first 3 years, we created 600 exam items. Each one had at least 10 hours of work in it. We would sit, in a group of like 10 around a table for 2 days, negotiating every single exam item. Already went through 2 rounds before it got finalized. And so by the time we produced the exam, it was the best performing exam that our psychometrician had seen, in that there were almost no items thrown out because they weren't valid, which means they didn't differentiate between a well-trained coach and a not so well-trained coach. And so then we knew we had a good exam, and we knew we had good program standards. So then the next thing was the evidence base. And thanks to Ruth Wooliver, who was then at Duke and now at Vanderbilt, she recognized that what we needed to do is use the literature to come up with a definition of coaching, because otherwise we would have no way of screening the literature and picking out which studies were really coaching and not. And so she led a large team in 2012, I think it was, that did a big review of the literature, and then we came up with a definition, which also mapped with what we had built on the standards path. So that then allowed us to be able to screen the entirety of the literature, which is now, probably, we need to do another round in the next year or so, but there's well over 100 randomized control studies. So the rest of the world has been really busy doing research. Wellcoaches has its own, we've been tracking outcomes because we have enough coaches out there. So we have a dozen peer-reviewed studies, more than 120,000 coaching visits in that data set. They're not randomized control studies, they're real-world practice studies because just of the nature of our world. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of folks who did RCTs. And so that literature now then allows us to go to the American Medical Association and present to the CPT panel and say, we have practice, we have evidence, we want coaching codes. And the group that led that was the VA, because the VA was really ambitious around training hundreds and hundreds of coaches. They're probably up to a couple thousand now. And they wanted to track the coaching services. They don't have a billing process, right? It's all internally funded. But they wanted to be able to have the coaches track their own services so they didn't get lost in other services. And so we supported them at the national board to get those codes approved 2 years ago. And now we're working with the panel. We've been back twice because the codes have come up for continued discussion, and they will continue to do so. And then it's a complicated story, but there's things we have to do to get to full approval, Category 1 approval, which then leads to all the steps that go to wide scale reimbursement. We're not waiting for that. We're already gathering healthcare systems that employ coaches who are wanting reimbursement because they're funding them by other mechanisms, and we're mounting a sort of collective effort to approach payers in a coordinated fashion so that we're not fragmented and we don't end up with too low a reimbursement or the wrong sort of shaping of these conversations. And so we have a pretty good idea of what we're shooting for in terms of reimbursement, and it is a national effort. But I do want to say that what we're taking on, having come out of the biotech and pharma world, we're doing as a little band of people what a pharma department would have, a multi-million-dollar budget a year to do. So we're still a small group of, you know, um, of a
Spirited.
small army, and we've made an impact with the AMA.
Yeah, it's
We are well known now, that group.
why is this invoking thoughts of Game of Thrones and Jon Snow saying you fight with the army you have? I mean, you are a spirit, yeah, that's very spirited army, getting a lot done, and you have such a value, as you already mentioned, and I've seen my firsthand within healthcare systems saying the value is so high. Let's work on the reimbursement, but we need wellness coaching and well coaches integrated in multiple things, whether it's smoking cessation to weight management to metabolic health. So I think I can't do anything but just really applaud you in what you're doing to continue to push this forth. I don't want to push you to a prediction before I ask you some final more needling personal questions. But do you have a no pressure here, just a thought as to how long it might take before you're satisfied to some level, not necessarily the sine qua non, but to satisfy to some level that we've really broken through and
Yeah.
this is a respectable level of reimbursement. Is it a year off? Is it 10 years off?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, the first thing to say is I'm here for the long game, so I'm not going anywhere. And I think when you live in the world of deadlines and reports on public markets and stuff, that works against playing the long game, right? And so I think that's the first thing to say because you just don't know, right? I don't have control over most of the forces, if any of the forces that would allow this to happen. All we're doing is laying out the foundation and doing our best to turn up in the right places with the right pitch. The pandemic has given us a tailwind, and we've had headwinds up until now with reimbursement because for all the reasons that are making it hard for anything to do with lifestyle medicine reimbursed. I mean, when we went to meet with CMS with our lawyers, they told us to use the term health behavior, not lifestyle medicine and healthy lifestyle, because that was not in their lexicon, and they would not support it. That's just in the last couple of years. So, investing in prevention is not wired into our healthcare expense. And at the moment, we spend so much on treatment, there's no room for any more investment, right? It's really a tough financial game. We have all this, a third of our healthcare dollars goes to health insurance, a third goes to drugs. That doesn't leave much for the people delivering it. Just think about the doctors and the clinicians are carrying that entire weight on their shoulders. It's their work that's supporting the health insurance industry, supporting healthcare's big infrastructure with tech and finance. It's because it's now big business. And so it doesn't, the whole thing is just so badly squeezed, right? So we're trying to fit ourselves into that. So it's not an easy thing to do. Um, and yet, and the ROI for coaching is good. There's places where, so the CDC has done a great job showing that if you invest pre-diabetes you can, and if people lose 5% of their body weight and exercise 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, they reduce their risk between 58 and 70% depending on their age. And so if we invest in the right places, and I think we know where those are now. So what's next? I think what
Hey,
I'm
could I add one thing there? By the way, for some financial perspective, in terms of just medical costs, prediabetes costs about $500 a year. It shoots up to $4,000 a year in an undiagnosed diabetic, simply because everything that's happening, even though no one is maybe like the blind men and the elephant, seeing that there's something driving it. Once it's diagnosed, it goes up to 10,000 because, of course, then you have to add in the ophthalmology, the podiatry, and all the Q3-month testing and so forth. So there is a good, yes, hats off to the CDC as much as they've been.
Yeah, they really did. They got that right. Yeah.
Yeah, they really nailed that. And I just want to add too, in terms of an ode to lifestyle as medicine, and not to worship at the altar of the scale. I do get a little bit, with the background I have, I call a scale a useful idiot. I realize that it is a metric that people shouldn't just throw out. I consider it like Neptune. It's not the Earth, it's not the Sun. It is there, but in the data of the DPP, those that were able to lose 10%, which is pushing it a little further, but not a lot, 10% or more had an 85% reduced risk of type 2 diabetes 4 years later. So, fantastic. I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss one thing that you mentioned related to what you mentioned. And I love that you were honest about, hey, I mean, maybe the harder you work, the luckier you get. But Tom, don't put me on the spot for when this is going to be, because I'm just, we're here and we're charging forward. And when it happens, again, the harder you work, the luckier you get. We'll see. A track record speaks for itself, and it's going to happen. Let's just let it happen when it happens. But you mentioned long game, and one of the things that I think we have as a mission with True Health Initiative, and we all have taken this pledge of at least these basic principles, and David has done a great job of showing, we're really not all that confused. We really don't really disagree. I mean, maybe there's a 20% at most, maybe it's even 10 or 5% that is amplified as where this cacophony of confusion is coming from that's not real. And we've taken this pledge, and therefore we all struggle. I love David's admission in a recent podcast, I can't remember, about his inability, like myself, to meditate, because all he can think about is how many emails could I be answering right now, or something like that. But we all are trying, we're all working towards the long game, having a health span that matches our lifespan. And you are a pillar of health yourself. But whatever has recently happened aside, a question regarding Margaret, Coach Meg's, Margaret's day. What is a typical, I told you I was going to throw one of these day. What's a typical breakfast? Or do you just respect the hunger scale and say, I'm not really hungry for breakfast, so I don't have a breakfast? Whatever the case may be, what is a breakfast or a break fast whenever it comes around? For Margaret on a typical day, an average one.
Well, the first thing to say is that my weight management strategy since I've been in my teens has been to eat lighter in the evening and go to bed. There's a fine line between being hungry and not being able to sleep well versus being sick. So my real self-regulation is in the evening.
I'm getting some coaching here, everyone, by the way.
So I describe that as coming into base, landing, at home base, not hungry, but I could eat something. So there's just sort of and I've been doing this for so long, I just know how much to eat a few hours ahead, bedtime, so that I'm in the right state. Because if I eat at night, I gain weight.
That is my spiritual moment of the day, in the spirit of Hara Hachibu, I guess, right? Like he's not hungry, not obviously stuffed, just right. By the way, I don't know if you look up my bio on this or something, but my issue is nighttime eating. So this is going to be tonight. I will put this into specific action regarding understanding my intuitive. Where's that threshold? Not hungry, not full. Thank you. I
watch the scale. So I go up and down 2 pounds multiple times all year round.
So you
So
do you have
I
that.
just go up. I go up because I do have. I love to eat. I love great food. I mean, it is one of my greatest pleasures, and love to cook. So I love a good meal. So then I gain and then I come back. So I go up and down, up and down, up and down. But I watch it. So if it's my birthday on Christmas Eve and my weight's up, I won't eat birthday cake.
That's right. So that is okay.
I just, as soon as I see the scale up, I change it that day. So I don't wait around and say I'm going to wait until after the holidays because
Yes.
it's too hard to damn lose it. I mean, it is really hard. I did gain 10 pounds when I was 16, 17, and it was so hard to lose it. I said, this is never going to happen again. And so I have since then had this pattern. So I'm always going up and always coming down. Like I'm stable too. But then, okay, so the point about breakfast then is I'm hungry in the morning.
And by the
I'm
way,
hungry. And I
that
wake up hungry. And so I have my cup of black coffee, and I journal. I do my own mindfulness routine. And then because I have celiac and I can't eat wheat, um, we have lots. So my husband makes. I used to make him, but I'm busier than him now. We have these beautiful muffin recipes
teamwork.
with flax and hazelnut meal and walnuts and whatever they have. So I have one of those. I might have a boiled egg. I might have a piece of cheese. I might have on the weekend we might make a small omelet or something. So I make sure I get protein and then some fruit. So and water. And so yeah, and I love a big breakfast like a brunch too. So and then I generally eat again if 2, 3 hours later I'm hungry again, and then I'll eat lunch. Especially because we've been at home so much, I've changed my routine. So I eat a fair amount before 2 o'clock, and then dinner is a nice dinner, but it's not a lot of calories. It's not 1,000 calories. It's
It's
probably
in a sense the eat breakfast like a king or a queen, lunch like a prince,
or the
princess, and dinner
morning.
like a peasant.
I
Yes.
eat well in the morning because I use a lot of energy.
Hmm.
Like I gain weight on vacation when I'm not using my brain. So I use a lot of energy. I push my brain
Strategic
hard.
resting, strategic resting.
Yeah.
And so the,
So yeah. So that's my routine.
and that's consistent with the not ironically those who have successfully also kept weight off in the National Weight Control Registry, where we see 80% of them eat within an hour of awakening, going out 5 days per week or more. So that is fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, in terms, and it sounds to me, I don't, and this is just completely from what you said. I didn't plan on this question, but it sounds to me like we might be able to include you in the world of flexitarians. Are you? I will straight out admit I am a
Yeah.
flexitarian.
Yeah. So I have very low cholesterol by nature, and so I don't so if I have like a grass-fed piece of meat or some chicken or fish a couple times a week, I don't I my cholesterol is very low. So in fact, I probably need some saturated fat
Mhm.
to keep it in a healthy level. So I just happen to be blessed not to have the genes for heart disease. I really don't.
Well, I'll tell you
And
this.
so I take advantage of that. I've got like 100 over 65 blood pressure, 95 over 65 blood pressure. My lipids are low, my HDL's high, and I eat in a way that keeps that going. I'm assuming those are good markers, and I feel
Yes,
so.
they're very good markers, and I still think you're earning them and not giving yourself enough credit. Um, for for me, and I do have a lipid disorder, but I've had a coronary calcium score that was zero, unlike my beloved parents. Uh, the issue for me in flexitarianism, and I guess coming from binge eating, is that the concept of restriction to me, and deprivation just leads to a psychology that goes down a maladaptive path I can't live with. So it's the livability. Fantastic. I love that. And by the way, you mentioned something about hubby and the teamwork, which is also supported by science, because in the English longitudinal study of aging, we see that when life partners are doing things on the same page together, obviously, I don't think we need a study for this. It's a lot better than when you're swimming upstream or against stream and someone
Yeah,
is
exactly.
going a different direction. Physical activity wise, barring whatever happened recently, what is the overarching way that you stay physically active? Uh,
Yeah. Well, I have been active um, 3 to 5 times a week since I was 17.
So
So
it's ingrained.
I've always been active. I was never an athlete, but I started jogging and swimming and cross country skiing and tennis and bicycling a lot in my teens and 20s. I did a lot of like I've been to Nepal doing big hikes. I've done week-long trips on kayaks, week-long trips in canoes, week-long trips on bicycles. So I don't have time for that stuff now, but I have a history. I was born on a farm
I was
where
going to ask, where was
work.
this? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I was born on a farm and physical work.
Where was that? Where were you
Oh,
born? If you
in Canada, north of
know?
Toronto, a
Okay.
dairy farm. So I was, you know, physical work was just sort of part of life, right? And so yeah, so I've been I'm small and I'm strong for my size. I'm not as I said I'm not athletic, but I just don't ever stop. So unless I've had like a surgery or a flu I've actually even had the flu ever. But I mean, if I've had some sort of thing, I might have taken a week or two, or I've had injuries for sure. Like I have an injury right now, but yeah, I've never stopped exercising regularly. I never got out of shape. And when I first got in shape jogging when I was 17, I went to university at 17, and I was jogging 5 days a week. That was so hard to get fit jogging. I thought I'm not going to stop.
Right. Because once you
I,
do, it's a
I
lot
mean,
harder.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so I've never really not been fit.
Yeah.
I've
It's a,
never, and so it's just, and over the years, I just do different things. And that does evolve. Like I've gone back to the stuff I did 20 years ago during the pandemic because I don't have these fancy spinning classes to go to and Pilates and stuff that was fun or yoga, hot yoga. So I like vigorous workouts. I like to sweat. I like to push myself hard. I like the feeling of cardio. I had trouble moving to strength training because I don't really love lifting weights. And that's now about 15 years since I've been lifting weights. And now I like right now because I have injured my knee, I'm doing upper body weights, and I've got my music on, and I'm actually having fun. To be honest, it's pretty good.
that's
So
wonderful.
so I balanced out yoga, weights, jogging, elliptical, then swimming, cross country skiing, a little bit hiking. Um,
And it's been something that's been positively self-reinforcing, and maybe you can give a little ode to the mental performance benefits of staying physically
well,
active.
that's what I depended on. I mean, now I have my own much more sophisticated techniques for dealing with my emotions, which I've written about in articles and things. I really do metabolize my emotions intentionally every day, and I've developed my own technique to do that, which I'm teaching people. But before that, I relied on cardiovascular exercise to manage stress.
Sign me up for that emotional digestion class, please. Uh, and I guess you already mentioned it because my last question was regarding stress management, which you kind of wrapped in the final question there.
Yeah,
And you're by the way, I'm recalling an email discussion with Walter Willett. I think Walter Willett, you have although Eddie Phillips says Willett, so I'm going to have to talk to Walter and say, is it Willett or Willett? I need the definition of the final say on this. He also grew up on a farm
yeah, and Wisconsin, yeah,
in
dairy
Michigan.
farm, same thing. Oh, what?
Yeah,
Oh, was it?
in
Okay.
Michigan. Yeah, so you guys may not have been that far apart because obviously Michigan, Canada.
Yeah.
We here in Detroit actually I think one of the only places you can look south to Canada because of the way Windsor
Yeah,
kind of
right,
wraps up
right.
around under Detroit.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely just amazing. I knew it was going to be amazing, but it was even more amazing. It was amazinger. I'm going to make up a new word. Really, thank you on behalf of the True Health Initiative and News of the Day here noted. Margaret Moore, the founder CEO of Wellcoaches, the chair of the Institute of Coaching at McLean, affiliated with Harvard, and just an awesome, amazing person. Uh, what can I say? Thank you so much. We look forward to your continued success. We'll be praying and wishing you luck, but I have a feeling you won't need as much of that as another person because you really are a hard-driven, working person. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's been delightful to be with you. I look forward to the next one.
Such a pleasure.